What's up, Wall fans? Welcome to a very special Monday edition of Common Sense Sundays. Of course, this is the live feed for Common Sense Sundays, episode 112. We are a little bit off schedule, so I'm not going to get into a lot of stuff here for the opening of the video feed. You know what we're doing. We're going to get straight into it. Here we go.
One, two, three, go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers, welcome to a special Monday edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall. This is episode 112, and again, do not adjust your calendars. It is a Monday. Sometimes we do this. It just makes it easier scheduling-wise. So here we are on a Monday afternoon in August. Now, I know we had a little bit of a unplanned hiatus, I guess you could call it, and we'll get into a little bit of that before we get into digital trends. But before we get into all of that, we always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us during episodes, after episodes, before episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's right, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's our official Facebook page. All kinds of info getting disseminated on there. And if you're a YouTube user, head on over to youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That is our official YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and check back often for video clips and full video feeds that get posted up there. They get posted on Facebook. They get posted on YouTube. Some people like using YouTube. Some people like using Facebook. We use both of them. And then, of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean, right there on Instagram. I have been so backlogged on photo editing that hopefully over the next week or two, it's just going to be a flood of show photos because I'm trying to get back into the swing of it, and I've just got too much going on. I'm working too many jobs at once here, and that's been part of the problem. But most likely new photo content coming up there, a ton of it over the next week or two. And, of course, don't forget about our official website, which is SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's your one-stop shop for anything and everything related to Go Tell It to the Wall. And, of course, me, Sean O'Rourke. And that's also going to give you links to those platforms I just mentioned. And you're also going to find a link to our Patreon campaign on there. If you want to support us through Patreon, you can become a patron, linked directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. And if you want to support us financially, but you don't want to get involved with Patreon, although honestly, from my experience and research, Patreon is one of the best compared to supporting artists through other websites and avenues. But if you still don't want to do it, you can pick up some Common Sense merch through our merch website, which links directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. So make sure you check out all of that. As you may have noticed, we were off the past like two or 3 weeks. I can't even remember anymore. Summer was winding down. I had all kinds of crazy stuff going on. As I've mentioned before, I picked up another gig, and I'm working with a design agency, and that's taken up a lot of time. We'll get into some of that during parenting, but I took a trip with the family, did a quick weekend trip there. It's just been crazy busy. And then about a week ago, I completely lost my voice. I know this has happened before, where this was one of the worst I've ever had, where I really couldn't talk at all. Like I had to say to my wife and kid, I was like, I am going to do my best to not talk right now because I've got to somehow get my voice back. And you can probably hear, those of you that listen to all the episodes, I'm still not 100% there. There's a little raspiness still going on, but at least I can talk now. So we'll see how far into episode 112 we get, and if I actually end up losing my voice entirely again, which I hope doesn't happen. But you just never know. And I don't even know why I lost it. A lot of times I'm like, I was overusing my voice. I was out doing things, or I was at an event or a show where I'm yelling and hooting and hollering. It just decided to go away on me. It was kind of ridiculous. So I spent about a week letting the voice recover, and we pushed episode 112 an extra day just to, and like I said, not at 100% yet, but feeling much better than I was a week ago when you couldn't even understand me. It was kind of silly. All right, now that we're done with that, let's get into some digital trends. I've got some fun hashtags to share with you all this week. And, of course, the heat wave it's better than it was, but it is still quite warm here in Southern California. And I think we're getting another increase on it. This is every year people are like, oh, it's August and September. We're almost to September and it's fall. It's like, nope. that is when another heat wave hits, and we're not quite done with summer, and hopefully by the time October rolls around, it starts to cool off. Anyway, digital trends, hashtag indictment watch. This one's trending right now because the Orange Menace has been hit with a few indictments, and literally it was trending today. In fact, there's a good chance that by the time you're listening to this, he has been yet indicted again, this time in Georgia. There's a grand jury that is literally convening right now. So I'm not giving you up-to-date information, but I would encourage you to follow that hashtag if you're interested in following along with those indictments or seeing some of the ridiculousness that is finally coming down on the Orange Menace there. And it really is just getting ridiculous. That's like how much trouble does the guy have to be in before people stop supporting him? It's real. The guy's still polling like crazy for the Republican nomination. It's crazy. Y'all are going to nominate a felon. What? So check out hashtag indictment watch. And like I said, I could finish up this episode and be like, well, there's another official one out of Georgia. So apologies if you're listening to this and you're like, well, no, he did get into. Yes, I realize that. The jury is literally convening right now. And we don't go live. It's video feed. And it could literally be happening as I'm recording. But I don't tend to. I mean, I guess I could. I don't tend to look at my phone. The only times I do it is if I'm recording and my kid is in school. Or like elsewhere. So in case, God forbid an emergency happens. Anyway, let's move along. Hashtag, you know what would be nice? Yeah, is it not you? Yeah, this is the hashtag. There's probably a hashtag that's YOU, but this is YA. You know what would be nice? And this one's trending right now. So as usual, I figured I'd share a couple of mine. And this one kind of goes hand in hand with the last one. And you know what would be nice? If politicians quit gaslighting and blatantly lying. And we're going to get into some of this because it's literally been happening like crazy. It's going on right now where politicians blatantly lie. They get into little hissy fits on social platforms. I'm refusing to use the new name for that Elon app and website, but you know what I'm talking about. And then, you know what would be nice as well? As if we got rid of Nazis again. We live in a world where our grandparents, great-grandparents, depending on your age, parents maybe, depending on your age, fought against Nazis, and now we have just let them back into the country. We've been talking about this for a couple years now, and it's just getting more and more rampant. It'd be nice if we could just kind of get rid of that again. We had a whole war about it. Let's do it again, without the war, just using common sense. Let's not support Nazis, and let's not let them run around like the racist assholes that they are. All right, moving along here. Hashtag should be socially acceptable. Hashtag should be socially acceptable. And of course, if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, really, you know something that's very near and dear and important to me and to many of our fans and listeners. So hashtag should be socially acceptable to have mental illness. Now, yes, I realize I often talk about the strides we have made over the past 10, 15, 20, even 25 years as far as awareness on mental health issues and compassion and all that stuff, but we still have a long way to go. And especially if you fall into a certain type that likes to simply blame mental illness anytime something happens, then I would really prefer that it be much more socially acceptable. Despite the fact that we have made many strides, we could still do a lot more to have compassion and to make it socially acceptable, and continuing to build off of what everyone has been building off of for the past 20 years or so. The other one, hashtag should be socially acceptable to avoid social situations. And I mean this in two parts, because I always say take care of your mental health. If you're not in a good place and going to be around a bunch of people is going to negatively affect your mental health, don't do it. You shouldn't force yourself to go to something just because it's expected of you, even though it could be detrimental to your own mental health. And the other side of things is, and I talk about this with people often, I get along with most people. I do, with obvious exceptions, and none of them really are fans of this podcast, so that's neither here nor there. But the thing is, and I've said this to people, I've gotten too old, and life is too short to be hanging around people that you don't really want to hang around. And we often, as a society, find ourselves in these situations where you have to go to a social event and you find yourself talking, faking it with somebody that you really don't want to be around. Let's make it socially acceptable to just stay away from people that are not good for you, whether it's mentally or just people you just don't want to be around. Like I said, I am friendly with most people, but I do run into people at times where I'm like, you know what? I don't need to socially interact with you. Let's make that socially acceptable, something we can work on. All right, another thing this actually just got trending Saturday or Sunday. I think it was Sunday of this past week. And there is a shortstop of the Tampa Rays. I believe he's a shortstop. I don't follow the Tampa Bay Rays baseball team that closely. His name's Wander Franco. And apparently social media went into an absolute frenzy yesterday as news broke that this shortstop, who's 22 years old, signed a very, very large contract recently with the Tampa Bay Rays, has been dating a 14-year-old female, a girl, a teenager, 14 years old. There's nothing appropriate about that whatsoever. And through social media, people had uncovered this and figured it out. And the other thing that is crazy is, I swear it's almost daily. There was a like, I want to say a youth pastor or something in Colorado or Utah that got was convicted of raping a underage girl or underage child. I don't even know. I don't like to read these things. It's very disheartening. And he got like 60 days in jail. 60 days for raping. Unbelievable. And I would encourage you to scroll to get this information, but just be careful, because you're going to find people on there that are defending this guy, Wander Franco. All I can do is laugh, because these are the same people that scream grooming and all this other stuff. And the people doing that are the same exact people that are saying, well, no, let's wait till the facts come out. Yo, there's pictures of him with a 14-year-old girl. What else do you need? This is absolutely crazy. So let's use some common sense, inject that common sense into society, and go after the real groomers here, who is someone like Wander Franco of the Tampa Bay Rays. All right, another thing that's been trending, and this one's pissing me off, and luckily I've seen people clap right back at it and make other jokes and point out how stupid it is, but there are accounts out on certain social platforms that are posting old photos of people, and you say, oh, well, trust me, my extended family has done this. There's a scanned photo from the 80s, and I'm like, well, that's embarrassing. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is old photos of trans people, and a lot of times it's put out on social platforms with the caption, he's a man, and it's like, okay. Again, we talk about this so much. This does not affect other people in any way, shape, or form. It is simply a form of bullying that these people have to take to social platforms and point out things that have nothing to do with them, do not affect their daily life, and are simply trying to bully people. That's all it is. If you look at it, there's no gray area here. There's no reason to be doing this. You are simply bullying people because they are different from you, and it doesn't affect you whatsoever. So I'd like to see that essentially end. And we're talking about the same group of people. These are the people yelling groomers, and the people posting these things with old photos are probably also on there defending men, 22-year-old men, dating 14-year-old girls. All right, now, of course, last weekend, I think it was last weekend, this thing went viral. Oh, my God, did this go viral. The Alabama boat brawl. I don't even know what they're officially calling it. But some dumb white people, I'm not even going to say that's actually the perfect term, didn't want to move their boat for a security guard who happened to be a person of color. And then, of course, they decided to start a fight with this security guard. Then people came to defend the security guard. There's footage of this crazy brawl. You've probably seen it. People went crazy with the memes and blah, 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 blah. And the reason I bring it up in digital trends is now we have another example of a social trend, a digital trend, memes, whatever it might be, being beaten to absolute death. Now, for those of you that are not familiar at all with the video, at one point in the video, a guy grabs a folding chair and starts to hit another individual with said folding chair. So, of course, everybody starts creating folding chair memes. There was a couple days there where you could not scroll more than 2 posts without seeing some kind of folding chair meme. Okay? We need to figure out, as digital platform users, how to not beat the shit out of something that was funny once, maybe once. But good Lord, were there a lot of chair memes. I even saw a post from a police department somewhere in the U.S. where the police were holding folding chairs and acting like they're weapons. We get it. Dude picked up a folding chair. Dude hit somebody. One meme, move the fuck along. There's a lot of other things to do with your life, for God's sake, people. I don't get it. Memes can be funny. I once in a while. But when people are like, oh, I spent 3 hours scrolling memes, like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, go get some sun. Just have a glass of water. Do something else. How much joy can you get out of 3 hours of scrolling through memes, for God's sake? Anyway, let's move along here into some mental health. I don't have a ton this week, but I want to talk about a couple things as we are getting into, it's obviously still summer here in the United States and most of the world, unless you're on the other side of the equator or however that works. I'm so terrible with geography. People start making jokes about, oh, you don't know where, and I'm like, nah, man. I never took, now we had social studies where we studied maps. I never took a actual dedicated geography class. There was a time I could name all the counties in California. You know, it's something that you learn about California in 4th grade here if you go to school in California. And I don't know, maybe that's the same in every state. 4th grade, you learn about the state you live in. It's all California, which is fine. But anyway, now that we've gotten tangented there, we are coming up on the change of season. It is still summer, obviously, because good Lord, I'm sweating in my studio here. It's like 80 some degrees outside. So we're not quite there, but you can kind of feel the shift. And we're going to talk about it in parenting, but kids are going back to school. I know Los Angeles Unified went back to school today. So you kind of feel that shift. You know what I mean? And this can affect many people's mental state. A shift in season, especially people who really, which I don't understand it because I sweat like crazy and I run hot, but people enjoy the summer and the sunlight. And when there's not a lot of sunlight anymore, it can affect them mentally. And I understand that if you're somebody who thrives off the sun. But the thing is, you want to be aware of that because, you know, they call it like seasonal. There's all kinds of names, seasonal depression being one of them. You just want to be aware of it and not let that. And the thing is, you can let it creep in. Just know that that's what's happening. I often talk when it comes to mental illness and mental health, the feeling of helplessness and not knowing why you feel that way. And again, not that you need to know why you feel that way. It's okay to not feel okay regardless of what is going on around you, even if you can't pinpoint it. But sometimes it does help to pinpoint it. And if you're somebody that goes through like those seasonal depressions, the season change, and it puts you in a funkier mood or whatever it might be, being aware of it can absolutely help you not sink as deep as you could if you were just kind of, lack of a better phrase, stewing in it. Stewing in it. I feel like one of my parents right there. You're stewing in the, where does that word even come from? I don't know. As you get older, you pick up these funky phrases. And then it's good to look at the positive sides of things. Maybe you love summer and the sunlight, but good Lord, we had that heat wave. We're hopefully going to get some cooler weather for the fall. That always helps me. I'm more of a fall person anyway. I love when the weather gets cooler. I don't like this hot sunlight. Like, give me my hoodies and flannels. But it just depends on the person. And know that those around you might be affected without really knowing what's going on. So be aware that your friends and family, even if you don't feel that way, but you notice a slight change in friends or family or coworkers, whatever it might be, know that they might be going through that. And it doesn't mean it's your job to help them. You might not even need to do anything. Just being aware of it and knowing that, you know what, they're just struggling right now and it could be because of this, and there's probably not anything you can do to help, or maybe there is, but it's not so much being obsessed and wanting to help. It's more of just being aware. This is something we always talk about with mental health, is being aware. Don't always try to fix it. Simply be supportive. Simply be understanding. And those are huge steps for somebody that deals with mental health issues or mental illness. And this really got me thinking because I have had, it was a couple years, literally 2 years ago, I had a very bad episode. Throughout my life, and this is me just being honest, and I'm not a doctor, I talk about my own experiences. I've had many what you could call episodes throughout my life, and some worse than others. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a month, and sometimes it's so depressive that I can't even function. And 2 years ago, I had one of those. COVID was getting better, but we still had a lot of it going on. This was 2021. There were vaccines, but kids weren't getting them just yet. My kid wasn't eligible at that time, and I had to send her off to pre-kindergarten at school. And that completely upended my life because I was and still am, obviously I work like 4 different jobs, a lot of night work and stuff, but I was primary caregiver. My wife was going into the office every day, and then COVID hit, and all 3 of us were just at home. And we actually functioned very well as a family unit during COVID. And so what happened was it was a huge change in my household and my family, and I went into an extremely depressive state. It took me a while to get out of that, and I sought out help yet again, which is something I've done multiple times throughout my life. And between the big life change and being nervous about sending a child out into the world, school, with COVID still being pretty prominent, was just a perfect storm to send me into a very depressive state. The thing is, know that change will happen and that life is ever evolving. So this is kind of like with the seasonal change. Look at the positives. Think about the fun things down the road. Think about the growth as a family, the growth of your children, the growth of your relationships, the growth of your friendships, how those strengthen over the years. I'm not a doctor. This is simply my personal experience. But those are ways to deal with those changing situations. And I'll tell you, I had to take some time to deal with it, and things it took a little while, but when they got better, oh man, were they much better. And there's always help out there. And I may not be able to help you, but I'm always here if you want to reach out. If you're having any kind of issues, I can point you in the right direction as much as I can. And there are also all kinds of resources out there for you, whether they are expert resources, peer resources, simply reaching out to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. All these kinds of resources are out there, and I'm happy to point you in the direction of one of those if you were having trouble finding one. You could telehealth appointments. I would have been so much more apt to seek out help in my younger days had we had telehealth, where you don't need to kind of get yourself up and go and sit in the doctor's office and all this other stuff, and you can just be in the comfort of your own home. That's a game changer. It absolutely is. So know those resources out there. All right, some positive news. I was struggling with this one over the past couple days, so I just want to pour a little more salt in the wound of the Orange Menace here. More and more bad news for the Orange Menace. It's getting kind of wild, and I would not encourage you to get on True Social, but if you go on certain social platforms, you see these screenshots of the shit that he's putting out into the public on his own social platform, and good Lord, the man is running scared. And as I said during Digital Trends, most likely another indictment has come down at this point. In fact, I'm going to look at I don't see any breaking news on my phone, but most likely an indictment has come down on his head again at this point. And, for years I was saying, we were hearing things like, oh, he's broken the law and money, whatever it might be, and blatantly lying. And for a long time I was like, I don't think anything's going to happen. I'll believe it when I see it. Well, it feels, and maybe I'm wrong. I am not a legal expert. I don't know. I don't read these indictments. I simply read, paraphrasing from people that have a lot more knowledge than I do. But it does feel as though we are currently at least moving toward the finding out half of fuck around and find out. So I consider that some positive news, and hopefully we're not going to see this megalomaniac ever hold another high office in this country ever again. Really anywhere in the world. I don't know. Maybe this guy might try to defect to some country and become a dictator there. I don't know. Who knows? All right, so that's your positive news for this week. I'm just going to be a little selfish with it. Although we don't have a lot of Orange Menace supporters that listen to this podcast. I'm sure there are some. But for the most part, that's probably positive news for a lot of our regular listeners there. All right, some parenting. Let's talk about some parenting. So I mentioned took a trip with my family. Actually, not this last weekend, not the weekend we just finished. Went down to San Diego. As I've mentioned many times, my parents live in San Diego, so we took the opportunity to go visit my parents. And then all of us piled in my mother's truck on Friday. We took a 3-day weekend and trucked it down to SeaWorld there in San Diego. For those of you not familiar, and everybody's familiar, I never watched the documentary, so just full disclosure, I know they ran into a lot of controversy. There is a lot of good things they do, and they have changed a lot of the stuff that was involved in those controversies. Nonetheless, I grew up in San Diego, so I went a lot as a kid. I hadn't been to SeaWorld in probably like 25 years. It's been so long. I mean, this is pre the whole documentary and everything else, and I always had respect for SeaWorld because they employed a lot of my peers. High school kids in San Diego tend to get jobs at like SeaWorld and the San Diego Zoo and stuff. I didn't because my parents owned a small business, but I had a lot of friends that were able to get jobs through there. So I always had respect for it, despite the controversies that came out a few years ago. And my kid absolutely loved it. My kid loves marine animals. They have little rides and games and all kinds of other stuff, and she had an absolute blast. The one thing that was ridiculous is my mother and my daughter decided that, and for those of you not familiar with the shows, like they have a dolphin show and the dolphins swim around and stuff, and they have what's called a splash zone. And this is where if you sit there, you are most likely going to get wet. First show we see of the day is the dolphin show. My daughter decides she needs to sit in the front row. Needless to say, we left that show soaking wet. And for those of you not aware, dolphins and orcas and seals and sea lions and all that, they live in salt water. So what happens is you get completely soaked at SeaWorld, and then the water starts to dry, and suddenly there's just salt all over you. I have gone through cleaning a pair of my shoes that I was wearing, trying to get the salt off of there like 3 or 4 times, and still a little bit on there. I gotta work on it again tonight. So it does cool you off, but know that it is salt water, and you are gonna get soaking wet. So if that's what you're into, do it. And then they made us do it again for the orca show, and it was extra funny because we didn't sit in the front row, and I'm going, oh cool, maybe we won't get too wet. We're still sitting in the splash zone. And then I realize as the orcas come out, and they talk about conservancy, but they have trained the orcas to do some splashing, that these are larger than dolphins. So their splashing out of the tank tends to go a little further. So right as we were getting dried off, ended up getting soaked again. Hot little tip I will give everybody, if you're planning on going to SeaWorld in San Diego, and I'm sure there's probably, because SeaWorld has multiple parks, throughout the United States, probably around the world, but I know throughout the United States there's the SeaWorld branded parks. In fact, Sesame Place that we talked about a month or two ago, whenever it was, is a SeaWorld park. It's owned by the SeaWorld company, Busch Gardens, which is no longer associated with the Anheuser-Busch. Busch Gardens, SeaWorld is the whole thing. The conservation, that's the word. Man, like conservatory? What? No, conservation. That's what they do. So maybe there could be this at other things, but definitely at SeaWorld San Diego. And what it is it's a meal plan. Now, if you have AAA, here's the hot tip. Pre-purchase the meal plan through AAA. Because my wife, she's purchasing the tickets for all of us. She goes, do you think we should get this? And it's basically what it was. Now, at the park, if you go in and you buy it, it's $50. But if you buy it through AAA, it's $30. And it's a meal plan. And what you can do is they have like 4 or 5 restaurants and then a snack place that you can go essentially every 90 minutes, every hour and a half. You can go and you can get an entree, a side or dessert, and a drink every 90 minutes. Now, for those of you that have never been to a theme park before, understand that theme park food is not cheap by any means. Not cheap. So I said, you know what, let's get a couple of those and we're going to be set for the day. And sure enough, I think it was actually our second meal that we technically got past it, but our first meal, everyone spent like $20-some each. So I'm going, okay. And the second meal, everyone spent like $30-some each because there was a Mexican restaurant there with like burritos and stuff. It was a little more expensive. So at that point, we had like almost double, and I said, no, we're not done eating for the day. We ate another, I think, 2 times after that, and I'm like, I don't care if you're not hungry. And we weren't wasting food, wasn't throwing it away or anything, but I was like, just eat. Everybody in the family, you're all eating right now. You're getting the money's worth right now. Because trust me, SeaWorld was taking enough money from me as it was. Games and other things, and I will say, they have good beer inside. See, when I was going to SeaWorld back in the 90s, it was Anheuser-Busch, and you could get Budweiser and Bud Light. Nothing against Budweiser and Bud Light, but it doesn't taste very good. Now they have some tasty craft brews down there. And that's the other tip is you can get a reusable cup. And if you pay $2 for the reusable beer glass cup thing, you get $1 off every beer. So essentially, if you're going to have 2 beers, and we were there, good Lord, were we there a long time. I was like, oh yeah, no, give me that glass because I'm gonna have 3 throughout the like 12 hours we're here, so well worth picking up the glass, and you can just walk around there. It's plastic, it's not a glass. I don't think you get any glass and see. You shouldn't have glass at theme parks. That should just be kind of a common thing. It's like having glass around the pool. Don't do it. Some kid's gonna drop it, and you're gonna have to clean up a bunch of glass. You know. I will say the one bad thing. Is SeaWorld, I swear it used to be earlier. They do their fireworks at 10 p.m. We walk in because, everyone's like, oh, yeah, the fireworks, blah, blah, blah. 10 p.m. And I went, are you fucking kidding me? I got a 6-year-old here. I realize she's hopped up on every kind of sugar available in this theme park, but good Lord, 10 o'clock is late for fireworks for kids. All right. I think I mentioned this previously. Swim lessons. Good Lord. We had the kid in swim lessons, and she's been a bit behind, and as part of that is courtesy of COVID. We had her in swim lessons, and then COVID hit, and there were no swim lessons happening, and took a little while to get her back in, but finally got her back in. And let me tell you, as a parent to parent, or even if you're not a parent and you know this, please stick with it. It was so frustrating at first. My kid did not want to put her head underwater. She didn't want to do certain things. She didn't want to, like, blow bubbles. These are things that they teach you in like a kid's swimming lesson, swim class lesson. But I'll tell you, man, kudos to her swim class teacher, who just was kind of like, you know what, we're going to do this. No, you can do it. You can swim underwater. And a couple more of those lessons. And good Lord, now my kid doesn't want to swim above the water. It's absolutely amazing. She's so much stronger now. So I would encourage you, if you're a parent, or even if you're not a parent and you're learning to swim yourself. Why is this making noise? Just don't get frustrated with it. It just takes time. And it's so hard because I grew up around the water. Like, I learned to swim very, 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 very early on. And so it was hard for me to like relate on how did I learn to swim? You know, like, I don't remember, but it's something you got to stick with. And I feel like there is a moment that it kind of clicks. You know, I remember this riding a 2-wheeler as a kid. I was, old enough to have a memory of it. I couldn't ride it. And one day it just clicked, and I'm riding around the street on a 2-wheel bike. And I think it's kind of similar with swimming. And make sure that safety first, always. That's the thing, is my wife and I both wanted to make sure that our kid was going to be safe around water. We obviously don't let her go swimming by herself by any means, but it's a safety issue because you just never want to deal with kids and water and unsafe situations. It's just, and it happens, unfortunately. It really does. All right, back to school time, for me at least. No, not for me. For my kid. For the kids around Los Angeles had their first day of school today, which is always one of these things. And I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. There's always this excitement of going back to school, but it's also the adjustment of going back to school. Like, for the past week, kind of tried to get the kid back on a regular schedule. Like, she's in San Diego. She's up till 10 p.m. It's like, Jesus. Yeah. And then, and I'm sure some other parents can relate, but I have a lot of parent friends personally that their kids are just up at 6 a.m. no matter. My kid is not. I got to drag my kid out of bed like she's a teenager. So getting into that rhythm again in that routine is very difficult. It's difficult every year. One thing I did experience that I don't remember from the past couple years, And this is for any of you parents out there, because I even got further confirmation from some other parents, is it was a very rough bedtime. I think she was very nervous about going to, and she's going to the same school. It's a new grade and a new class, but she has kids that were in her class, some kids, and, so there is a familiarity. But I think subconsciously she was very nervous and just didn't want to go to bed, and there was all these excuses and blah, 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 and as kids do. And I'm going, what is happening here? Unfortunately, if you're a parent listening to this, I can tell you parent to parent. I talked to another couple of sets of parents who confirmed that their kids kind of go through that too. And then I thought back to even like teenage Sean, like the night before going back to high school, for God's sake. I was like, and I love the fall, like I said, but I was like, I don't want to go back to school. And you tend to go into kind of a not depressed state, but just nerves and everything else. And you're like, and I think that's what's happening subconsciously. Not all kids, but to some kids. So if that's happening with your kids, know that that's what's going on. Now, of course, it's going to take a couple weeks to get back to that routine, but it is going to be nice to get back to that routine, especially over the past couple weeks, because I don't know if other parents can relate, but we hit this like 2-3 week period where there wasn't like Girl Scout camps and all this stuff. And, we had dance lessons and swim lessons and stuff, but there was no outlet for her like during the day. You had to keep her entertained, keep kids entertained. And so it's nice to get back into that routine and actually be able to get some damn work done in this house. Because I'll tell you, last week, there was one day, and I'm trying like hell. I had a ton of work on my plate, and I like all day. And my wife goes to her office. My office is in the house, so it's like I can close the door, but kids don't always care about closed doors, if you know what I mean. And so I got no work done, and it's just now it's nice to have a little bit of quiet during the day, and get some actual work done. And then, of course, like I said, new school year, new schedule, always takes a couple weeks to adjust. So if you've got kids or you're around kids, know that mentally they're kind of getting back into the groove of things for school, and it will absolutely get better after a couple weeks, because then they're making new friends, they're back on their routine and everything else, and that's definitely something that I've experienced the past couple years with my kids, and I've talked to other parents who deal with the same thing, kind of settling back into that routine. I'm fortunate this year too, because my kid got obviously got a new teacher, and they shifted teachers around to her school, and it's a teacher who she's never had as a teacher, but knows very well, and she was very excited about having that new teacher. So that definitely helped a bit, getting her to school and everything else. All right, common sense. We're probably going to go under an hour today. We'll see how this goes. I can feel my voice going. And I have like a mute button on this microphone, but what I really need is a cough button. For those of you that have never been around like radio studios, and it literally says cough on it, and it's a button you can push for a second, so it just mutes your mic for a sec. Like I have this whole button here, but it takes an extra second to get it going, and it's literally if you've got a cough and you're at your microphone, then your entire listenership is not hearing you like coughing or sneezing or any of that kind of other stuff. Usually I'm fine, but I could kind of use one right now because I can feel it coming up a little bit as far as my voice going and everything else. All right, common sense, Moms for Liberty and healthcare. This actually happened like a week and a half ago or so, and I honestly can't remember what originally brought it up, but the Moms for Liberty Twitter account, still calling it Twitter. I don't care about your letters, Elon. It might have still been Twitter at that time, too. I don't know. There was some tweet, and they retweeted, and they said, and I quote, healthcare does not belong in schools. Someone pointed out to them, like, what do you mean no healthcare in schools? And they doubled down on it and said healthcare does not belong in schools. For those of you that don't have kids, understand, we don't need a hospital in schools, but healthcare absolutely belongs in schools. You have a school nurse. If a child gets hurt, God forbid, you need somebody there to help. The thing that really pisses me off about this is Moms for Liberty falls into the same category of people who immediately blame mental illness when something happens. Immediately. Yet they don't want any kind of health care in schools. You cannot have it both ways. You can't blame something and then not want to fix it. That's not how this works. Of course, as we know, Moms for Liberty extremely lacking in common sense. We've seen multiple examples of this. what were we? Assholes with casseroles, and there was another term that I was enjoying for the Karens for, I don't know, this Moms for Liberty shit is just utterly ridiculous. I would encourage you to check it out and see how ridiculous it is. Just don't let yourself get so pissed off that people like that actually exist and are able to have a platform, because it's really infuriating. All right, Mitch McConnell, this one happened a couple weeks ago, but what I want to talk about it from a common sense standpoint. You probably saw this clip. He was giving a speech at the Capitol, not on the Capitol floor, but with some of his Republican constituents behind him or whatever it was. And like mid-sentence just stopped and looked utterly confused and had to kind of be walked off, and, we could sit here and say, oh, that was funny and everything else. I don't want to. Part of me does want to laugh, because this is a man who has taken away rights from many people. He does not deserve any kind of sympathy, but I'm not going to kick someone while they're down. That's just tends to not be my style, unless it's the Orange Menace. He can go down all the way to fucking hell, and I'm still going to be kicking him. But what's more important to keep in mind about this is we do need age limits for politicians. And I'm not just talking about Republicans. This door swings both ways. Mitch McConnell is clearly not fit to hold such a high office that he does. He's clearly not. This also goes for Dianne Feinstein, however she pronounces it. No offense to anybody with that same last name. She clearly should not be making decisions. This is someone from a Democrat from my home state. Now, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent, but I am very liberal and progressive. So I'd rather have a Democrat most times than a Republican, but I don't want a Democrat that doesn't know what the fuck is going on around them. So I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're unfit to lead your constituents, lead the state that you represent, lead the population that you represent, it is time to step down. And I don't want to be ageist or anything, but we are talking about people with immense power in this country, and then they stop mid-sentence. Dianne Feinstein, we've seen video of her. Does she even know where the fuck she is? I don't think so. We need to take this more seriously. All right, Lizzo. Man, this one hurts. My wife is a big fan of Lizzo. She wears her Yitty stuff, which is it's like the Lizzo brand of oh my god, it's one of those expensive lines. Fabletics, that's the word I'm looking for. Okay, I've got no voice, but I am remembering things that I usually wouldn't remember till the next episode. And I know she has done a lot for females out there and body positivity and everything else. But you probably heard about this. There's been more and more coming out. A lot of complaints, lawsuits, sexual harassment complaints, all kinds of stuff. And, we can sit here and say, well, maybe there is some story behind this, or it's caught so much traction now that I'm pretty sure we're looking at least at some accuracy here, which is really unfortunate. It's really frustrating, because I often say this: don't meet your heroes. Just don't. It's so tough sometimes. And here we have an example of somebody that so many people are looking up to, not just women, I'm sure men as well. And we come to find out how toxic she actually was to many people that worked for her. So it's really unfortunate, but common sense says you cannot treat people the way she is accused of treating people. And we all need to, in general, just treat people like human beings, for God's sake. And what happens is people get famous and they think they can just do whatever the hell they want. Much like this next person, Cardi B, who was doing a concert recently, if you haven't seen this. And it's interesting, because the first clip that came out, it shows somebody throwing water on her. And then she throws a microphone and hits somebody. And I think, from my understanding, I don't even think she hit the person that threw water. Then as more videos come out, we learn that she was asking the crowd to throw water on her. Now, when I saw this at first, I'm like, okay, you can be upset about it, but it wasn't like a water bottle. We've seen this with artists. It was water. Like, good Lord, come to some of the shows I go to. There's beer flying, there's water flying, and, it's everyone's having fun. But then we go to find out she was asking people to splash water on her. Like a minute before that. So I'm sorry if you didn't want it right at that moment, but this probably was an overreaction, and we can tell that it was an overreaction. And getting sprayed by a little bit of water I don't know that you want to throw a microphone at that person, because a microphone is going to do a lot more damage to somebody compared to some sprinkling of water out of a cup. I mean, let's just be real here. The other thing that just drove me nuts, and I saw some people were bringing it up, she threw the mic, and miraculously, the microphone was still singing. We found out that she was not even singing at all. And we're not even talking. Trust me, I have worked with artists who have done shows at large events. You get this a lot of times for singing the national anthem. There's kind of a backtrack that is going in their ear, but they are still singing. She wasn't singing at all. It was complete track. She was lip syncing. Keep in mind, we completely destroyed the careers of two gentlemen that were in a group called Milli Vanilli because they were lip syncing. What's her name? Is it Ashley Simpson? Was caught lip syncing for Saturday Night Live. Ruined her career. And now we have Cardi B. And only a small fraction of people are talking about the fact that she wasn't even singing. Do better, Cardi B. I think we've talked about Cardi B before and how she talked of drugging people and robbing them. So we're probably not looking at the best role model there to begin with. All right, one more thing here. In the common sense is politicians. Excuse me. I'm going to see if I can edit that out. I apologize. It finally caught up with me. My voice is going once again. Politicians blaming, and anyway, let me backtrack there for a sec. We all saw what happened in Maui. It's utterly devastating. It's incredibly sad. Many people lost their lives. Many people lost everything, their homes, their businesses, their cars, everything they own. And of course, we have a lot of politicians coming out and posting things like, Hawaii, all your money went toward the Ukraine. And it's like, no. Okay. Again, I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to politics or budgeting and all this kind of stuff, but I know for a fact that that's not true. Here we have another example of politicians gaslighting people. The other thing is, they're not telling the whole story because President Biden actually approved aid for Maui. There's federal aid already on the way to Maui. It happened like the day of he approved it. And we say, Biden's on vacation. No, he approved aid packages for Maui. And I would also like to point out the complete circle Venn diagram for people with a short memory. There was a time when the Orange Menace was in office. And for those of you not aware, we get some wildfires here in California. Unfortunately, it happens pretty much on a yearly basis. He decided to withhold federal aid for California because he didn't agree with the politics of many Californians. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot support the Orange Menace, cheer him on for that, then make up things, tell lies on social platforms, and pretend that you care. It's not how this works. So don't let these politicians gaslight you. And know that there's aid out there. And I will say from a personal standpoint, and this one, I still don't fucking understand how this causes so many arguments. Because people will tag me and they'll be like, Sean, can you tell people about your personal experience with the Red Cross? Full disclosure, I've talked about this before, but if you're a newer fan, my parents lost their house in 2003, the Cedar Fire. Absolutely devastated San Diego. Devastated it. If you remember years ago, they had to postpone, and the Chargers were still playing in San Diego at the time. They had to postpone Charger games. They had people staying at Qualcomm Stadium because they had lost their homes and they had nowhere else to go. So I have personal experience with this. And if you want to disagree with me, that's fine. You're not going to change my mind based on my personal experience. But what I will tell you is you're going to see a lot of stuff pop up, and I've already seen it. And the big companies are going to support it and everything else, asking you to donate to Red Cross for relief in Maui from the devastating fires they've just had. Without getting into detail, I would encourage you to do a little Googling. What do we always say, Wall fans? Fact check. Do a little Googling to see where your donation to Red Cross, where that money is actually going. And you will see that literally pennies on the dollar is going to actual people in Maui. Send me all the hate mail. I don't give a shit. This happens every time I pipe up about it. If you had a great experience with Red Cross, congratulations. do some fact checking, see where the money goes. That's all I'm saying. And if you want to financially help the people of Maui, look at people that are on the ground there and see what they are asking for donations toward. It's going to be a million times better than Red Cross and FEMA, and I can promise you that. So that's just my own personal 2 cents, and that is based on my personal experience, not my opinion. It is my experience when my parents lost their house, and then the research that I did afterward. I am by no means an expert, but I will encourage you, instead of giving money to Red Cross, to do a little bit of research as to where that money is actually going. All right, let's talk some entertainment news. Good Lord, last week, Taylor Swift descended upon Los Angeles for 6 nights. And mad respect to Taylor Swift. I get it. Very large fan base. Not my type of music. But man, she's taking care of people. She's paying truck drivers bonuses, all this other stuff. And from what I've seen, has stimulated the economy here in Los Angeles and brought money into the Los Angeles economy. But holy shit, am I glad she has finished up her Los Angeles leg of the tour. Again, not that I dislike her, but for like a week, all you heard about was Taylor Swift. You scroll some digital platforms, social platforms, Taylor Swift. Look who's at the Taylor Swift concert. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I listen to ESPN radio during the day a lot of times here in Los Angeles. They wouldn't shut up about Taylor Swift. It's fine. If you're a fan out about it, go crazy, all these other things. But good Lord, did it take over the media in Los Angeles for a week. And I apologize if she's now in your city and that's all you can hear about. But again, respect to Taylor Swift. And she's obviously very talented, has a very big fan base. But good Lord, did it take over the Los Angeles media airspace for a week there. Man. And then, of course, instead of being at Taylor Swift, I took some time to go see the Dollyrots 2 nights in a row. 2 nights in a row. Got to see them at the Knitting Factory there in North Hollywood on a Friday, which was fantastic. All the bands that played with them were great. And then got to see them the following night in the Parish Room at House of Blues down there in Anaheim. As much as it's ridiculously expensive, I do enjoy going down there because you can park easily. Went and grabbed a bite with actually one of our patrons, Tom, and his family before the show. And Dollyrots, they are always super energetic. They have 2 of the cutest kids you're ever going to meet, the Dolly Tots, always putting on a great show. Had a blast at both the shows, and I will say the band that opened for them both nights when I saw them was a 2-piece band called Dog Party. And the music wasn't exactly the same, but giving me local H vibes with like just 2 people. And it's these 2 sisters. They're actual sisters. And in fact, they even took the time to say, a lot of people ask us if we're actually sisters. You know, it's kind of like the Ramones. Everyone's last name is Ramon. It's like, well, they're not all brothers. It's just, they'll just go, took the last name Ramon. Not even legally, I don't think. It just, it was their stage names. They said, no, we are actually sisters and putting out music. And they've been around a little while, and I'd never heard of them. But I would encourage you to check out Dog Party as well as Dollyrots. And I know Dollyrots are going to have a new album coming out maybe in the fall. But I have so many bands that I love that I'm like, and that I know personally. And they're like, yeah, we finished our album. I'm like, oh, when's it coming out? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's 2024. Like, I get it. You got to be able to tour on it and everything. So I can't tell you when the Dollyrots album's coming out, but I believe they are, if not finished, they are close to finished with their newest album that'll be coming out. All right, and last thing I'm going to leave you with before we wrap up episode 112 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall is what I'm listening to lately. We haven't been doing this as much unless it's been a new album, but I have a confession to make. Those of you that know me know that I am a big Dropkick Murphys fan. There's a sticker on the wall there. I also really like Flogging Molly. There was a band very similar, actually out of New York, called the Rumjacks. They have been around for a while, and I've heard of them. And in fact, I saw them play a little bit because they played the club show with Barstool Preachers. Now, I was so busy talking with the boys from the Preachers that I wasn't giving them full attention. Finally, I was like, you know what? Let me take some time. Let me download a couple of their albums and check it out. And good Lord, have I been missing out. So if you're really into the Celtic punk that I am, make sure you're checking out the Rumjacks. I've been listening to their first 2 albums and probably going to get into, I think they have like 3 or 4 albums and like 1 or 2 EPs. And you can obviously pick those up in a lot of different places. So make sure if you're into that type of music, check out the Rumjacks, because I was late to the game on that for no good reason. I just never got around to listening to them, and I went, oh my God. Because that's what drew me to Dropkick Murphys when I was younger. I got into Dropkick in the late 90s, like when they started making it big. And it's like, this is a punk version of the stuff my dad made me listen to as a kid, the Irish music. And Rumjacks is even closer to that. In fact, when I was visiting my parents, I said to my dad, I was like, oh my God, you got to check out the Rumjacks, because he loves Dropkick Murphys. I'm like, you're going to like them just as much as Dropkick. So he's going to be checking them out. And actually, quick shout out. Eddie Traeger, who's a good friend of mine, actually is a musician. He's the former drummer for Necrogoblicon. Also has a project called Eddie Spaghetti. He has a hardcore punk EP that's coming out, band called Last Leg, and that is coming out this Friday. So check him out on Bandcamp. It'll also be on Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff, but it'll be Friday. It'll be Bandcamp Friday, so check out Left Leg. I'll probably talk about him more. I haven't heard anything. It's just Eddie's a good friend and has told me that I will enjoy the EP that's coming out, and they will have some shows coming up that we're going to help them promote. I might help them book a couple of smaller shows as well, so we'll keep you updated on that. So I'm listening to the Rumjacks, and as of Friday, I will be listening to some Last Leg. Last, not left, last. I'm like, we're on the last leg of this trip. That's what it would be. So check them out. All right. My voice kind of made it to the end, except for that ridiculous cough that I'm going to hopefully edit out so none of you actually hear it. But we're going to wrap up episode 112. And before we do, a quick reminder to follow us on all of our social platforms. First one would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Again, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Also, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall or at GoTellItToTheWall. And then, of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean. And don't forget to bookmark and check back often on SeanO'RourkeLive.com, our official website, which will give you links to those social platforms I just mentioned, as well as a link to our Patreon campaign and our merch website if you want to help us out financially. All right. Like I said, that is going to do it for us for this week. We should be back on Sunday. Same wall place, same wall time. This has been episode 112 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And remember, wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers, until next time, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.